Next, we have Michael, who is in Arkansas, and Michael has a question or a comment about polytheism versus monotheism. So, Michael, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you, Father?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank God. I have a question for Father Stephen DeYoung. You know, I was told once that there may have been a change at some point in just the way we're educated about religion. And I remember being taught about monotheism and polytheism, and I wonder if in the ancient world it was taught the same way, and how could this maybe contribute to our perceptions when we read gods in the Bible?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know you asked that to Father Stephen, but can I just begin to take a shot at this, if you don't mind?
Sure, please do.
Because I mean, he's the expert, but I do have a couple things I want to throw in here, if only so we can hear him correct me. So,
actually,
yeah, exactly. Everyone get out your animated GIFs for that. Yeah. So, you know, we today, like Christians today, we are monotheists. That's why we talk about it. And we're not polytheists. So there's this idea that we worship the one true God, and those pagans, they worship many gods, right? But that, as you know, if you listen to the beginning of what we were talking about tonight, you know that that's not the image that the Bible depicts. It uses the word gods to refer to all kinds of beings, and doesn't see a problem with using that same word to refer to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the one true God. You know, the one true God, that phrase that we use doesn't mean that that's the only being that we use the word God to refer to, because the Bible doesn't do that, right? So this idea of polytheism versus monotheism is actually a relatively later kind of notion in Western intellectual history, and you know, the reason why the idea of monotheism was kind of come up with is to try to group sets of religions together. So we're monotheists, and Jews are monotheists, and Muslims are monotheists, and over here you have polytheists. You know, these other kinds of religions. But I don't think anyone in the ancient world would have looked at it that way. I mean, that's not the way that religion kind of works and the way people understood it. And the question is really not, is there only one God, which is what monotheism means, that there's only one God. We see the Bible doesn't teach only one God. The difference is that there's only one God that you worship. And the other significant difference is that the God whom we worship, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, is a very different kind of divine being from all these other divine beings, right? So we, you know, like we were talking about atheists earlier who say, well, I just believe in one less God than you do. And it's like, well, no, the God that I believe in and worship is a God who is outside of time and space, is the God who created all things, right? You know, that is a different kind of being, if we can even speak in those terms, from how pagans understood what their gods were. And, you know, a pagan god is really a much kind of smaller kind of being. And the reason why is because a pagan god, we're going to talk about this a lot, I know, a pagan god is a fallen angel, right? So it is a god in the sense of being a divine spiritual being, but it's not a god worthy of worship. Now, people do worship them and have worshipped them. So that is what I would say is kind of the big difference between this you know, this idea that we have monotheism and polytheism. Really, what the picture that the Bible presents is actually not monotheism, but rather monolatry, meaning there's only one whom we worship. You know, we recognize there are many gods. Now, they're not equal. They're not equal. They're not, you know, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is not the same kind of thing that, you know, Zeus is, or Hera, right? Not at all. But the main thing is, the main question is how we behave towards them, and we're to worship only Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So, Father Stephen, do you have any way you wanted to correct that, or add that, or magnify that, or what?
Not really correct it. I'll fill in blanks. I don't have to actually you yet. Yeah, it wasn't the term monotheism was created at the end of the 16th and beginning of the 17th century.
Which in Orthodox time is like last week.
Yes. It doesn't even count for Orthodox people. Yeah. And it's not that it couldn't. I mean, monos and theos are both Greek words.
Yeah.
Right? And you do find polytheos used as a term by the fathers to refer to pagans. but not monotheos. When they talk about the fact that we have one God who we worship, like in the discussions about the Trinity and saying that they weren't tritheists, the term they used was monarchia, that there's one archi, one first principle, is how they chose to express themselves. So monotheism gets invented, and it basically, this whole taxonomy was invented so that we could have this evolutionary view of religion. And it was created mostly by 19th century liberal German scholars who, not coincidentally, at the end of their taxonomy discovered that 19th century German liberal Protestantism was the pinnacle of all human religion, right? Like, it had evolved to them, right? and so they posit, well, see, polytheism is this sort of primitive thing, and then you kind of outgrow that to monotheism. And they did this whole Hegel thesis antithesis thing where you have monotheism and polytheism, and then the synthesis of that is the Trinity or something. And as silly as that sounds, or as silly as I'm making it sound, if you or one of your children goes and takes an Old Testament course just about anywhere at a secular university or even most big Christian universities, they will be taught that Israel started out polytheist and evolved into monotheists.
Right.
And they will quote some of the passages we just quoted and say, oh, see, these are leftovers from back when they were polytheists. And try to set up this sort of taxon where it just sort of evolved. Religion just evolved. And that, of course, takes the idea that God revealed himself to humans out of the picture, which is why we would want to have that theory if we're atheists. And so it's important that we not only say, well, look, these categories aren't ancient and aren't original, but that we say that whole taxonomy doesn't work. And a couple of things real quick that refute it are, number one, it depends on the people who put together the Hebrew Bible being both incredibly sophisticated editors and writers and of deep theological truths, and being complete imbeciles. Because while they were doing all the editing and while they were changing all this stuff to make it look like they were always monotheists, they just missed all these passages.
Yeah.
Oops.
Whoops. Yeah, right, yeah. Exactly.
Whoops, we left all this polytheistic stuff in there. Our bad. So that's a problem. And then the thing to me that really blows it out of the water is that the plural form of gods, talking about gods in the plural, is actually more common in the Dead Sea Scrolls than it is in the Old Testament. And the Dead Sea Scrolls are written right before and during the time of Christ. Yeah. So they clearly hadn't evolved in their language. They were still talking about a plurality of gods. And one last note on this question, hopefully that's thorough enough, but one last note on this question, because I think this is important, is what we mean when we say that there is one true God. Right. What it means to be a true God. Because I think what we hear as modern American Christians, when you hear true God is, oh, well, he's the one that exists and the other ones are fake.
Yeah, right, exactly.
The other ones are made up, right? But remember what we were saying earlier in our discussion, the idea of being God is the idea of exercising authority and dominion and reign. And so God is the one true God. He is the one who truly holds all authority and power and dominion over the entire creation. Anyone else who has any authority or power or dominion has received it from above, has received it from him, or they don't have it.
It's derivative. It's
right, and that's why we reiterate that in the creed, that Christ is true God. Right, it's not just that he's God, that he's divine, right? But that he is true God. He exercises the same authority.
All right. So, Michael, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was excellent. I feel a bit misled by our education system, so I appreciate you both clearing that up for me.
Yes. Well, we're probably going to do a whole lot of debunking.